Welcome to The Explainer. So, today we're going to talk about something that's absolutely critical in our world: forecasting. We're going to break down how organizations try to look into the future, not with a crystal ball, but with data. Okay, let's just dive right in with a question that companies wrestle with all the time. Think about it. You make too many new phones, and you're just bleeding money on inventory. But you make too few. You've got frustrated customers, and you're leaving sales on the table. So, how on earth do they get it right? And really, at its core, this is the fundamental problem for literally everyone. The future is a giant question mark, and that uncertainty is a massive challenge, whether you're a tech giant, a city trying to plan a budget, or even just your local hardware store trying to figure out how many snow shovels to stock for the winter. So, what's the answer to this giant problem? Well, it's this powerful tool called forecasting. It's basically the formal process of using history, using data, to make a really good, educated guess about what's coming next. And this is so important to get. Forecasting isn't about magically predicting the future with 100% accuracy. It's about getting a good enough idea to make a smart plan. It's about grabbing the steering wheel so you can shape what happens instead of just being a passenger and letting things, well, just happen to you. So, where do you even start? I mean, a good forecast isn't just about crunching a bunch of numbers in a spreadsheet. Nope. It all starts with asking the right questions. And it turns out there's a really handy framework for this that successful forecasters use. It's called P5, and it's basically a checklist of 5 key questions you have to answer to make sure your forecast is actually, useful. This framework is absolutely crucial. First up, purpose. Why are you even doing this? What decision hangs on this prediction? Then, horizon. Are we talking about next week or 10 years from now? Next is information. What data do you have to work with, and what do you actually need? Then, value. How much is a good forecast actually worth to you? And finally, evaluation. After it's all said and done, how will you even know if you were right? Getting these 5 things straight from the get-go is everything. All right, so now that we have a way to ask the right questions, let's take a look at what kinds of things organizations are actually trying to predict out there in the real world. So, you see this big slice here for sales? That's what most people think of. And yeah, it's a huge one, but look at all this other stuff. Organizations are trying to predict their own costs, sure, but also these huge external things, like what the next big tech breakthrough will be, or even how society's attitudes might shift over time. Each slice here is a different kind of fog they're trying to see through. And these forecasts aren't all looking at the same point in time. The time frame, what forecasters call the horizon, totally depends on the decision you're trying to make. And what's really interesting here is how that horizon is directly tied to the scale of the decision. A short-term forecast, that's about tactical stuff, like how much milk to order for the store next week. Medium-term, that's more operational, like setting the company's budget for the whole next year. But that long-term forecast, that's about massive, strategic moves, like deciding to build a new factory that will define the company for decades. So, where do these predictions actually come from? I mean, they're not just pulled out of thin air, right? They come from data. And if you know how to look at it, data tells a story about where we've been, which can give us some pretty good clues about where we're going. Let's make this real. We're going to look at a classic forecasting problem: U.S. monthly retail sales. Now, when you first plot this data, it just looks like a total mess, right? It's just a chaotic, jagged line of ups and downs. How could anyone possibly predict anything from this? This raw data is full of what forecasters call noise, and these are predictable patterns that actually hide what's really going on. Think about it: that huge spike in sales every December for the holidays, and then the big drop in January. That's noise. So, to find the real story, forecasters use some really cool techniques to filter out all that noise. One of the most common is called seasonal adjustment. It's basically a mathematical way to erase those predictable ups and downs, like the holiday rush or the back-to-school shopping season. And just like that, once you strip away that seasonal noise, boom, the real underlying trend, the true signal, just pops right out. All of a sudden, the chaos is gone, and you can see the real direction things are heading. And that, right there, is the whole game for a forecaster: finding the signal in the noise. Okay, so seasonal adjustment is great for stuff we can kind of see coming, like holidays. But what happens when something hits that is so massive, so completely out of the blue, that it shatters every pattern we thought we knew? A really powerful, sobering example of this is what happened to U.S. air travel right after the September 11th attacks. Look at that drop. Forecasters have a name for this, a structural break. It's an event so profound it makes all the old data pretty much useless. The fundamental rules of the game just changed overnight, and every single forecast was instantly wrong. So, putting all these pieces together, how does an organization actually go from having a question to having a finished forecast? Well, it follows a very clear, structured process. It's a pretty logical, step-by-step journey. You start by defining the problem. And hey, remember PHIV from earlier? That's step one. Then you figure out your resources and go collect the data you need. The real heart of it is that initial analysis. That's where you're looking for the trends, the signal in the noise. Based on what you find, you select the right forecasting method. You generate the forecasts, and then you watch them to see how you did.
All right, let's just boil this all down. What are the big takeaways? First, forecasting isn't magic. It's about giving ourselves a map for an unknown future. It all starts with asking the right questions, that PHIV framework. We know that finding patterns in data is key, but we also have to be humble and know that unexpected shocks can and will happen. And at the end of the day, the goal isn't to be perfectly right. It's to make better, smarter decisions when you don't know what's coming next. And that, right there, is the million-dollar question. Forecasting is an amazing tool for preparing for the future we can see in the data. But how do we prepare for the things that have never happened before? That's the ultimate challenge, and it's what makes this whole field so difficult, so vital, and honestly, so fascinating.